I do everything. Oh, no problem.
Is that a video camera?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's how much memory?
A lot.
Really?
A lot more than the hard drive downstairs, because we're at the IBM Research Center in New
We
Almaden.
sold the hard drive division a long time ago.
I know, but the first hard drive is sitting downstairs with, I think, 5 megabytes, right? There's a lot more than 5 megabytes on this little tiny camera. It's a creative beta camera. So who are you?
I'm Dharmendra Modha.
Yep.
I'm a manager of IBM's Cognitive Computing Group here.
Yep.
And I'm also principal investigator for a DARPA-funded project involving 5 universities: Stanford, Cornell, Columbia, UC Merced, and Wisconsin-Madison.
Just a few second-rate universities, right? I'm just kidding, because those are top universities.
These are the top universities, and the professors at the universities are really top of the field. We have people working on analog VLSI, asynchronous VLSI, circuit designers, nanomaterials, psychologists, neuroscientists, theoretical computer scientists. And that's just the university team.
Yep.
Not to mention the IBM team, which is material scientists, nanocircuit designers, supercomputing experts, simulation experts, virtual environments, neuroscience, computational neuroscience, and I may have forgotten.
Just a few smart people in a room, huh?
Right, and so our goal is really, this is one of the most modest projects that IBM is undertaking, is to build a brain as cheaply and quickly as possible.
And that's what you mean by cognitive computing?
So cognitive computing is the quest to engineer mind-like intelligent business machines, IBM, by reverse engineering the structure, function, dynamics, and behavior of the brain, and then delivering it in a small, compact form factor, consuming very low power that rivals the power consumption of a human brain.
Interesting. Now, that can go in a whole number of paths. How do you study whether you've gotten there to act? Because a brain is first of all, our brains are totally different, right? If we were had our brains cut open, because I've witnessed a brain surgery with a patient that was awake and his head was cut open and the doctor was probing each part of his brain, and each part of his brain is going to be a little bit different than it is in my brain, right? So you have that randomability, but how do you define whether you've gotten there to a cognitive computer, to a computer that's close enough to a brain to call it a brain?
So you're focused on the minute differences between you and me.
Yeah.
I would argue that you and I are the same. Not only that you and I are the same, but we are the same as the monkeys, cat, mice, and rat, and whales and elephants. So really what we would like to do is 3 things. One is that we would like to understand the universal constraint that neuroscience has taught us.
Yeah.
So in other words, learn from neuroscience what are the structural and dynamical constraints that the brains must obey. And it turns out that the cortices, cerebral cortices of rat, cat, monkeys, humans, are essentially very similar in design.
Yeah.
So first is neuroscience. Second is to take the data from neuroscience and to engage in mammalian scale cortical simulations. So for example, in 2007, my team was able to carry out rat scale cortical simulations with 55 million neurons, half a trillion synapses on a 32,000 processor blue gene in near real time. So that's second. First is neuroscience, second is supercomputing, and third is nanotechnology. So nanotechnology is shrinking components down to ever smaller sizes. And as we can begin to see how one can rival the density and power consumption of the basic building blocks of the brain, namely neurons and synapses.
Yeah. That's totally amazing, because the brain, a computer works on transistors, right? On and off.
Right.
A brain
is very different. It's analog, it's asynchronous, it's fault tolerant, it's reconfigurable. And the computer, in fact all computers that we have today, are based on the principles that John von Neumann laid out for us in 1940s.
Yeah.
And basically the principle is that the processor and the memory are separated.
Yeah.
And the link connecting the two, the bus, has become the bottleneck.
Yeah.
This is the bane of modern computer science.
Yeah.
So all things we do, invent new architectures, new programming paradigms, are all around circumventing the von Neumann bottleneck.
Yeah.
Guess what? Mother Nature has discovered a remarkably different form of computer architecture in which memory and computation are evenly distributed throughout the fabric
Yes.
of the cortex. And there is no von Neumann bottleneck,
No.
right? So,
And in fact, that's where I was going, was the brain researchers I've talked to say that it's not one cell that fires. It's maybe a group of cells.
right,
Or,
assemblies.
and that's quite different than how a computer works. So how are you making a computer model that, I guess? You know, or how are you going to make a computer, which is transistors with on and off gates, behave like a brain is, which is quite different? All right.
Well, see, you can always capture the computational substrate of the brain and represent it in a modern supercomputer.
Yeah.
So the key hypothesis is that's the fine. That'll be a brain. It'll just be a very hot and expensive brain, and you won't be able to carry in your backpack as you take your kids to school. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of difficult to tie a 32,000 processor blue gene to your backpack. so where brain-like architecture comes is in seeking low-power, compact implementations.
Okay.
But in terms of functional substrate, that we should be able to represent in modern computers. That is fine. So anyway, the reason why I'm very excited about, I mean, you know, as you can tell, I'm very excited about this project in general. But these days, my excitement has sort of gone up a notch because we hear, you know, the chairman of our company, Sam Palmisano, now writing this wonderful article on the smart planet, right?
Yeah.
So smart planet, you know, I'm sure IBM has an official interpretation, but as I understand it, it's digital and physical worlds collide,
Yes.
right? But as these two worlds come together, what does it mean to live in the world as we do? That means that we have to deal with an array of sensors. You know, human brain can deal with sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell,
Yeah.
integrate it all into a unified framework and create categories of time, space, object, and interrelationships.
Yeah.
Right? We have no computer that can even remotely approach the capabilities of the mind.
No. Or at least the brain is very good at pattern recognition, right? I can look at that clock and in a microsecond I know the clock
Right.
and the time.
Right.
A computer would have to stare at that clock for a long time.
Yeah, and what if I change the color of the clock
Yeah.
and made it a triangular clock to throw in a monkey wrench, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to tell it, but you know, you'll say, oh, that's a cool watch, and oh, right? So in other words, not only, so you know, what you correctly point out, in our ability to respond to very ambiguous environments, to behave in a context-dependent fashion, right? If I and you were to meet at a social gathering, we'll probably be having a different conversation. Perhaps
Yeah.
we'll be having the same conversation. But you know, so an ability to integrate information. And now think about a smart planet, right?
Yeah.
Think about peppering the whole world with sensors.
Yeah.
You know, take the world's ocean supply, water supply, right? And start measuring, you know, temperature, humidity, turbidity, pressure, wave height, you know, on a very fine grid all over the ocean, right? Now think about streaming this data to some sort of a brain that needs to make sense of large-scale ambiguous patterns. Or think about, you know, all the asset classes we have, right? Real estate, commodities, currencies, stocks, bonds, you know, streaming real time to
Yep.
some sort of a, you know, machine that can figure out large-scale patterns. Perhaps we'll be able to mitigate the risk and will not be in, you know, the predicament that we are as a civilization actually now, right?
Yep.
So I think that this smart planet is really a forward-looking vision, and I feel very excited because I have at least one tool which can, you know, maybe make it live. And you know, we are looking at it purely from a technology perspective. I mean, you know, if you look at IBM,
Yep.
IBM has a 100-year history of innovation. Right? It's a $100 billion company, right? So you sit and think, you know, how can I even affect this big company with its rich history, right? So only way to do it is to think next 100 years, right?
Yep.
So as we begin to think on such a time scale, I mean, it's inevitable, unpredictable, but inevitable that cognitive computing will play a role, has to play a role.
Absolutely. And I'm already seeing signs of going down that path, right? At Davos, I met with some researchers who are building prosthetics for humans that'll hook into your human brain, right? So that's a step along the line where they're using your human brain to run a machine, basically.
Right.
And where does that end? 100 years from now, we're going to be
There's
crazy.
a beautiful philosophical conundrum, right?
Yeah.
Let's say that you come to us, not us, to the neuroprosthetics people, and say some cells are bad, and say, okay, I'm going to take out those 2 cells and put little transistors, right? And so you then go fine, and you go home, and you're happy, and then again you come back because you get addicted to this process. You slowly start removing your cells, start putting the silicon. Pretty soon the whole brain is silicon. And is that you or not? So I don't know. This is what philosophers worry about. I'm not a philosopher, nor am I a scientist. I'm an engineer. I'd like to really build something that profoundly pushes the boundaries of technology, and that's something very, very petty, like make money for IBM's customers by either increasing their revenue or decreasing the cost, because I think that's a very simple way to profoundly improve the world.
No, it's true. When I was over at Broadcom, for instance, they took a machine that was about the size of my home PC, and in 8 years they reduced it down to a quarter of my thumbnail and put it into every cell phone, right? It's a GPS sensor.
Right.
And so you see the benefits to human beings by microsizing, by turning things that were big, like this computer is pretty big, and that hard drive was really big, and that today I don't even have a hard drive in this camera, right? It's solid state memory with 8 gigabytes of memory.
It's amazing.
It's totally amazing.
It's
and
really,
and in 10 more years, it's going to have 800 gigabytes.
And think about it, it doesn't have any brains, So the way I like to think about it, forget iPhone, right? What if you could have an iBrain, right? Just to carry it around. I mean, what are the kind of things you could do with it? You could live in the same environments that we do, interact with it in multifarious, multifaceted way that we do. I mean, it could profoundly change the productivity and security of the nation and the society. So.
Yeah, when I go to conferences, in fact, I met, I'm not even sure, I forget her name, but I was sitting with the first tenured psychology professor at Harvard, right? Now, when I met her, she didn't come out and tell me that, right? She just seemed like a smart person, right? It was a fun person to talk to. But Mike Arrington was sitting next to me, and he was Googling all the people we were meeting live.
Oh, it's amazing.
And he blurted that out. He goes, "What?" And that totally changed what kind of conversation we were having, right? Because all of a sudden we knew who she was, what she was working on, what she was thinking, that there was going to be a movie about her, all sorts of fun stuff that we had no clue about. And she wasn't going to tell us that because it's not nice to be bragging, hey, I'm a great psychology professor. You don't start a conversation that way.
Right, it doesn't go very far, right?
No, but by having access to
Context.
that, having the access to, 20 years ago, we would never have known that. We would have,
much later.
Yeah, that conversation would have gone away, and maybe we would have seen her in a movie or something and go, wait a second, we were at dinner with her. Why didn't we talk about that? Why didn't we talk about this, stupid thing?
It's become really, really amazing because with this way information is spreading.
Yeah.
Once I gave a talk, and there were some bloggers in the room as I was talking. By the time when the talk got over, it was transcribed and put up, at the end of already on the web, right?
Yeah.
And obviously far more people saw that than they saw the talk.
Yeah.
So it profoundly changes the dynamics, and no camera is too small.
Nope.
Because,
This is a deck of playing cards right now.
Exactly.
And 10 years from now, it might be on your glasses. And
No, I meant no camera is too small.
Oh.
In a very profound way, right? I mean, this once you put it on the internet,
Yeah.
right? The viewing stage is infinite.
Yeah.
Right? The whole humankind can log in, right?
Yeah.
And so no stage is too small, as I meant, as long as you have cameras.
Yeah.
Whatever you say is public.
Now, my iPhone now has an app on it that records all of the audio all day long. And if something interesting happens, I hit the button, and it saves the last 2 minutes. So
it keeps recording.
Yes.
Silently.
Yeah.
Oh, and you say, oh, that was good. And you can retroactively go back.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
So, and as the world goes on, we're going to have more and more of that, right? More and more storage, more and more cameras, more and more information. I mean, Facebook is already seeing 100,000 new videos a day, and YouTube is seeing like 10 times as much as that. You know, our brain, if I had an iBrain that you will develop, I would have it go through all the videos and watch them all for me and tell me which ones are going to be the interesting ones. You know,
Well, NSA would like to do that too.
Well, is that what you're doing with DARPA?
I was joking, but
no, but I'm sure they're working on
we can't employ enough Americans to watch all the videos. They'll probably be trapped, right?
No. In fact, with 100,000 videos, you would have to watch 80 days just to watch the first, hour or something. It's crazy. So how are you so you have several teams, multidisciplinary, working on. How do you attack a problem like this? Because it's that's a 20-year, 30-year, 40-year problem.
One step at a time, right?
Yeah.
So one of the beautiful thing is that we have collaboration from DARPA, and they've provided I like to say money, mission, metrics, and milestones. So really, what it does is that it drives people towards very measurable progress. So
yep.
Because so it's very concrete. And really it turns out that if you look at the problem, the most important element in the brain is not a neural network, it's really a synaptic network. So
explain what you mean by that.
So if you look at the brain and think about problem of either simulating the brain on a supercomputer or think about implementing it in some sort of analog asynchronous VLSI hardware. In either case, basically anytime you take a problem and you want to map it to a computational framework, right? There are three metrics: communication, computation, and memory.
Yeah.
Right? All the three metrics are dominated by the number of synapses, not by number of neurons, because number of synapses, which are the junctions between neurons, outnumber the number of neurons by a factor of 10,000 in the brain. Yeah. So really, in the first step of the project, DARPA has chartered us with demonstrating a nanoscale, low-power material that captures the essential function of the synapse while being scalable to extremely small sizes, 100 nanometer, and consume very low power, 1 picojoule. And second...
How small is it?
That's very... So in 1 square centimeter, you should be able to fit 10 billion of those.
Wow.
Right? So, and these are distributed computing little devices, right?
Yeah.
And then, so that's on the hardware side. On the software side, of course, nobody knows what the algorithm of the brain is. But we believe it's a sort of a universal microcircuit.
Yeah.
So we're undertaking, simulations and theoretical analysis to try to uncover what would be the cortical microcircuit, the cortical building blocks would be they could replicate to arrive at a wide array of functions in action, perception, sensation, cognition, and interaction.
Whoa.
So I think that pretty much summarizes the technical challenge that we have to overcome in the short time frame.
Now, I have a new baby, 18 months old now, and I'm watching how he's learning. Is it going to take 6 years to learn to boot this thing up? And because a human brain takes that long, right? My son can't speak yet. He can't read. He can't. He can barely communicate his basic needs and wants. He wants food and wants water and wants TV.
Well, good news is that your son is far smarter than where we hope to get within this program, right? I mean, really, the end goal for DARPA program is something very simple. Is if you can make a chip, which is sort of at a mouse level, and in 7 years, if you can make a network of chips, which is at cat level, and that's also loosely defined, we'll be happy. I mean, if you can make any dent into this problem of building brain-like computers, I think that would be a phenomenal revolution. I mean, your son is far more ambitious target, I think, even at 18 months.
Yeah. It's pretty crazy. My question was, once you build the cat computer, right, how long will it take to boot up and learn what it needs to learn to do something useful?
Right.
Because my son has spent 18 months just learning how to barely communicate his needs and wants.
But see, I think that your son is still already doing very complex things, right? I mean, it's just, we just tend to think of non-expression of language as sort of, missing. But it's probably already a very powerful being. It's just a different way of communicating, right?
Yep.
And I mean, these are the challenges that will come to, right? I mean, currently we are in very foundational stages. Can I get a nanoscale synapse? Can I get some core microcircuits, right?
Yeah.
And how will it scale, and what would it really mean? We'll find out.
Yeah. So who's doing the material research on the synapses?
So we have, we are investigating 4 different materials.
Yeah.
Phase change memory, magnetic tunnel junctions. These are being investigated, and organic nanotrap. This
explain in layman's terms what that means.
It is a very different kind of a material, which has a negative differential resistance property.
Okay.
So in other words, as you increase, normally when you increase the voltage, the current would increase, right?
Yeah.
Here the current may decrease for a short part of the curve, in which you can exploit to create synapse-like behavior.
Interesting.
So we are exploring 3 materials at IBM, right here, very close in Science and Technology Department, and the people are Chung Lam and Bipin Rajendran and Bulent Kudi. They are investigating phase change materials. Stuart Parkin and Xin Jiang are investigating magnetic tunnel junctions. Campbell Scott is investigating organic nanotraps, and Professor Philip Wang at Stanford is investigating oxides, nickel oxide, as a nanomaterial. While I'm at names of people, Professor Kwaben Abuahan at Stanford is a leader in neuromorphic computing, analog VLSI. Professor Rajit Manohar at Cornell is a leader in asynchronous VLSI. Dr. Paul Maglio here at Almaden is a leader in virtual environments.
Yep.
Professor Brian Wandel at Stanford is the head of psychology, works on white matter pathways in the brain. Professor Giulio Tononi at Wisconsin is a well-known neuroscientist, neuropsychiatrist. Stefano Fusi at Columbia is a theoretical computational neuroscientist. And Christopher Kello at UC Merced is a cognitive scientist.
Yep.
So, this is roughly the team. And it's really, really exciting. I mean, when we get all these people in the one room.
How do they find those materials? I mean, I know I've been in a lab where I can move a copper atom across a piece of, an iron oxide atom, a piece of iron, one atom over a piece of copper. I mean, how do you, to come up with a new material that'll do this?
It's extremely challenging. It is, I have a profound, my understanding is not any greatly more than yours, because I'm also a computer scientist, right? Yeah. But I've come to have profound respect for physicists and material scientists and nanotechnologists who work at these scales, unexplored frontier. You see, if I have a bug in my code, I just change it and recompile.
Yeah.
Right? If you invest, hundreds of millions of dollars into a wrong material, you can't recompile it overnight and hide it, right?
Yeah.
So the amount of foresight and planning and thoughtfulness that is required on their part is orders of magnitude more than a lot of computer scientists, such as myself, have even experienced. If I learned one thing, was deep respect for the work and the difficulties, right? Because really, you're trying to get Mother Nature to play by your rules. I mean, how hard can it be? So.
No, that's true. And my dad's a material engineer, and the stuff he was working on 20 years ago is not even close to what they're working on today.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
I mean, they were trying to figure out how to build microcircuits that would survive a nuclear war, right? But this is at a scale that's much smaller and is different, right? Tell me about the labs, because the lab I was in downstairs, you can move a piece of an atom of of iron across a piece of copper. It's amazing. I mean, to be able to do that, to just move an atom around and put it where you want it to, it's just mind-blowing. But the equipment there is very complex and expensive, and that's one advantage of working in a big company like IBM that funds this stuff.
That is, so, again, I should really emphasize that, I have a tremendous privilege of sitting at the confluence of, many things.
Yeah.
So first is obviously DARPA for the funding,
Yeah.
right, for providing the money, mission, metric, milestones that really drives everybody together, right? Second is the university partners, as I enumerated to you, the tremendous range. I mean, we're talking about like 6 different departments here, right, coming together to help you from so many different universities. And then finally IBM, we are leveraging here, our project leverages all 4 functions at Almaden. So at Almaden we have 4 functions: storage, software, services, and science and technology. And we leverage that. We leverage our research labs in Yorktown Heights. We leverage IBM's fab in Fishkill, Burlington. We leverage our colleagues in India and Zurich. Really, where else can you have the privilege of trying to get so many brilliant people and so much investments focus towards changing the world in a positive way? And that's why Smart Planet is very nice, because we have been coming at it from a technology perspective. And Smart Planet really gels together from an application and from a overarching vision. It really brings together why what we are doing is of outstanding societal and technological importance.
Very cool.
I rest my case.
Very cool. So how can we follow you through this journey? Because it sounds like it'll be a multi-year, maybe even a multi-decade journey, right?
Through Sarah.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about on the public, because people around the world are going to watch this video. And
I have a blog, and several of my talks are online. I gave a talk at Singularity Summit, which is online. It's a 20-minute talk which crisply summarizes the whole mission. And we write papers, but those are far too technical. And just keep visiting us.
We will. Hopefully we'll get the iBrain one day.
Very soon.
Maybe
You'll
my
be the first
son.
to get a try, right?
Well, maybe my son.
Your son would be quite old by the time he gets it. But I hope he gets it sooner rather than later. And,
very cool. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with me.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Your questions are outstanding.
Thank you.